Welcome to Hollywood Latest Report. In the early dawn hours of Monday morning, the Family Worship Center campus was quieter than usual. The sanctuary lights remained dim, the corridors echoed with a rare stillness, and the staff moved slowly, speaking in hushed tones, as if the entire ministry collectively held its breath. By noon, whispers had turned into a storm of speculation. A private letter allegedly written by Loren Larson about his son, Joseph Larson, had been leaked, sending shockwaves across social media and leaving the church community stunned. What followed was not only a moment of public vulnerability from one of the ministry's most respected figures, but a deep reflection on the pressures, expectations, and unseen emotional weight carried by leaders whose lives unfold under constant public scrutiny. According to individuals close to the family, Loren had written the letter months earlier, a deeply personal expression of concern, gratitude, and fatherly fear, never meant for public consumption. It was discovered only when an anonymous source circulated scanned excerpts online, sparking immediate debate about privacy, ethics, and the growing culture of digital sensationalism. As screenshots spread, viewers noticed the unmistakable handwriting, the emotional tone, and the unmistakable expressions that seemed far too intimate for public eyes. The leak that shook the church. What made the situation explosive was not the content itself. There was nothing scandalous, nothing embarrassing, nothing morally questionable, but rather the sheer vulnerability within the words. Loren wrote not as a preacher, not as a leader, but as a father speaking from the deepest corners of his heart. He expressed worry about the pressures Joseph faced as a worship leader, the expectations placed upon him by both family legacy and global audience, and the heavy emotional cost of living a life where every note, every sermon, every public moment is dissected online. "There are days," the letter read, "when I fear the weight on Joseph's shoulders will crush the parts of him the world never gets to see." The line alone triggered thousands of responses, ranging from empathy to criticism, admiration to speculation, but no reaction compared to what occurred later that evening when Loren himself, usually composed, articulate, and steady, appeared on a live broadcast looking visibly shaken. Loren Larson's live appearance, an unexpectedly emotional moment. It began as a standard teaching session, the kind Loren had conducted countless times, but within minutes, viewers noticed his voice tremble slightly, his pacing slower, his gestures more deliberate. Then, in a moment that caught even the production team off guard, Loren paused mid-sentence, lowered his head, and exhaled deeply. "I never wanted that letter read by anyone except the person it was written for," he said softly, blinking back tears. "To see parts of my heart shared without permission. It's more painful than I can describe." For the first time in his decades-long ministry career, Loren Larson broke down publicly, wiping his face as cameras continued rolling. It wasn't dramatic, it was human. It wasn't theatrical, it was raw. And within minutes, the clip circulated across social media platforms, with captions like, "Loren Larson breaks down after private letter leak. This is the most emotional moment we've ever seen from him. Parents will understand this pain." But behind the emotion was a deeper message, one that many viewers later praised him for articulating with striking honesty: the pressure of public expectation. "I know people look at Joseph and think he's strong, confident, gifted. He is all of those things," Loren continued during the broadcast. "But he's human. He feels the pressure, he feels the expectations, and as his father, I feel them with him." Loren described nights spent praying for his son, moments of quiet fear about the toll of ministry life, and the challenges of raising children under the intense spotlight of a global faith community. Sometimes, he admitted, being a father in ministry is harder than being a minister. The comment resonated widely, sparking discussions among pastors, parents, and young adults who had grown up in similar environments, where family and calling are deeply intertwined. Joseph's response: silence, and then a statement. For several hours after the leak, Joseph remained offline. It wasn't until late Tuesday morning that he finally posted a brief message. "My father's heart has always been my greatest anchor. Please respect our family's privacy as we handle this together. We stand united." The statement was short but powerful, instantly calming growing online speculation. Those close to Joseph say he was deeply upset, not by his father's words, but by the betrayal of trust involved in the leak. One worship team member shared anonymously, "Joseph treasures his father. Seeing something so personal exposed like that, it hurt him, not because of the content, but because someone chose to violate their privacy." Where'd the leak come from? This remains the central question. Church leadership issued a brief notice asserting that they had begun an internal inquiry, but that no accusations would be made until facts were verified. Speculation swirled, with some blaming digital breach, others blaming private correspondence mishandling, and some suggesting it may have been exposed accidentally rather than maliciously. But regardless of how it happened, the emotional fallout was undeniable. A family known for strength shows its humanity. Part of what made this moment so striking was the Larson family's reputation for composure, unity, and resilience. They had withstood years of public ministry with minimal controversy, and many supporters felt protective upon seeing Loren's emotional state. Supporters flooded the family with messages. No apology needed. Fathers loved their son. Your vulnerability made us respect you more. You showed us that leaders cry too. In a world increasingly hungry for authenticity, Loren's unplanned emotional moment became a point of connection rather than criticism. Analysts call it a turning point in ministry culture. Several religious commentators weighed in on the significance of the event. One noted, "For decades, pastors felt pressure never to show emotion, never to admit fear or concern. Loren's moment might be the shift, proof that transparency, not perfection, builds trust." Another added, "This incident highlights the need to protect boundaries around pastoral families. The public forgets that behind microphones are parents, spouses, children, real people." Joseph and Loren, a bond even stronger after the leak. Sources close to the family say the incident may have brought father and son even closer. The emotional vulnerability, the public outpouring of support, and the shared frustration over the leak reportedly sparked long conversations between them. One family friend said, "They didn't spend the week grieving. They spent it praying, talking, strengthening each other." Joseph told Loren the letter meant more to him now than ever. Church culture, privacy, and the digital age. The leak triggered a much larger debate within faith communities and beyond. Where is the boundary between public ministry and private life? Are leaders allowed emotional privacy? Should personal letters remain sacred in the digital era? Is sharing leaked content ethical, even if it isn't scandalous? For many, the answer was clear. Privacy must be respected. Compassion must come first. Leadership does not erase humanity. The emotional aftermath, Loren's reflection. In a follow-up statement during a midweek teaching, Loren composed himself more confidently, but still spoke with visible heart. "I'm not ashamed of my tears," he said. "If anything, I hope this teaches people that fathers pray, fathers worry, fathers hope, and sometimes fathers break too." He ended with a message that spread rapidly across social media. "Our family is not perfect, but our love is real, and nothing leaked or exposed can take that away." The community's response. Over the next 48 hours, thousands of comments appeared. "Your transparency strengthened our faith. Every parent understood your pain. We're praying for your family's peace." Never before had the ministry seen such an overwhelming response to a moment of vulnerability. The story behind the letter, a father's heart. Though only small portions were leaked, those who read them described the letter as heartfelt, protective, encouraging, deeply emotional, filled with prayer. It spoke of Joseph's calling, his struggles, his spiritual growth, and the love Loren carried as both pastor and father. There were no accusations, no confessions, no scandals, just honesty. And perhaps that is why the public reacted so strongly. They were reminded of something simple yet universal. Even leaders have private hearts. Looking forward, what happens now? Church leadership is expected to increase digital security. The Larson family is said to be taking time together, away from the noise. Loren returned to the pulpit days later, teaching with renewed strength, and Joseph continued his worship responsibilities with noticeable confidence. One observer wrote, "It feels like this family walked through a fire and came out refined, not burned." A final message from Loren. At the close of Sunday's service, Loren offered a brief but powerful reflection. "God sees our private battles. Sometimes the world sees them too. But as long as our hearts are anchored in Him, nothing can shake us." The congregation rose to its feet, not out of routine, but in recognition of a moment larger than a leak, larger than a letter, and larger than the pain it caused. It was the moment a leader became human, and the world respected him more for it. In the days that followed the emotional broadcast, the atmosphere around the ministry changed in subtle yet profound ways. Staff who had worked with Loren Larson for decades said they'd never seen so many people stopping him in the hallway, not for counsel, not for theological questions, but simply to say, "We're praying for you," or "We appreciate your honesty." For a man long respected for his authority and strength, the gentle waves of compassion seemed almost unfamiliar, yet deeply welcomed. Behind closed doors, however, the family continued to process the emotional weight of what had occurred. Those closest to them said the Larson home had become a sanctuary of quiet conversations, late-night prayers, and long walks where father and son spoke openly about things they had never verbalized before. One family friend described the atmosphere as solemn but healing, like a wound that finally got the air it needed. The letter itself, its contents now widely discussed though still not fully revealed, had become a symbol of something far greater. It represented a father's heart, laid bare without intention, and a son whose life, though blessed with opportunity, carried weighty expectations. Many people underestimated what it meant to grow up in a prominent ministry family. Joseph had been singing on stage since he was a teenager, watched millions of viewers online, and carried the Larson name wherever he went. To some, this was privilege, but to Loren, it was a fragile responsibility. In the leaked letter, one line in particular stood out to many. "Sometimes I worry Joseph carries the world on his shoulders while the world forgets he has his own." That sentence was printed, reposted, reshared, and discussed endlessly on social media. Many young adults from ministry families said the words reflected their own experiences in ways they had never been able to express. One user wrote, "People see our purpose, but not our pressure." Loren put into words what so many pastors' kids feel every day. Despite the outpouring of support, the breach of privacy remained an open wound. The investigation into the leak continued quietly, and leadership maintained a strong stance against speculation. But individuals close to the process hinted that it might have been unintentional, possibly an old draft or backup copied without permission during an organizational file transfer. Regardless of the cause, trust had been shaken. Still, the family's response in the aftermath became the bigger story. On Wednesday evening, the church held a special prayer service, originally scheduled for another purpose, but now overshadowed by the events of the week. When Loren walked onto the platform, the sanctuary erupted into warm applause, something he rarely received and certainly didn't expect. He paused, taken aback, then smiled softly before raising his hand for calm. "There's no need for applause," he said gently. "I'm just grateful for your prayers." But the congregation admired that humility. People weren't applauding the man, they were applauding the humanity he showed. Throughout the service, the worship team, including Joseph, led with a tenderness that many described as different, deeper somehow. Joseph's voice carried the weight of a week filled with emotion, his eyes glistening as he sang lines that now seemed almost prophetic. "Through it all, my eyes are on you." Later, a camera panned briefly to Loren, who closed his eyes tightly as if holding back a fresh wave of tears. The moment resonated across the livestream audience, drawing thousands of comments of encouragement and solidarity. Those who saw Loren up close afterward said he looked peaceful for the first time since the leak. As he shook hands, he repeatedly said, "Thank you for your grace," with a sincerity that touched people deeply. But the real breakthrough came later that night, when Loren and Joseph sat together in the family living room, the letter placed gently on the table between them. The house was quiet, siblings settling in their rooms, lights dimmed except for a soft lamp in the corner. A family friend who visited briefly described the scene. They weren't angry. They weren't defeated. They were reflective, almost grateful that something painful pushed them closer. Joseph reportedly told his father, "If the world saw your heart, maybe God meant for them to see it. Maybe it was time." Loren didn't respond right away. He simply placed a hand on Joseph's shoulder, his eyes brimmed with emotion. Those words, simple yet profound, began to shift the family's perspective. Instead of viewing the leak as a violation, they began to see it as a window through which the world caught a glimpse of